Today we will revise agency law and we will discuss an essay question in agency law. Agency is a fiduciary relationship which exists between two persons, one of whom expressly or implicitly assents that the other should act on his behalf so as to affect his relations with third parties, and the other of whom similarly manifests assent so to act or so acts pursuant to the manifestation. The one on whose behalf the act or acts are to be done is called the principal. The one who is to act is called the agent. So there are different parties such as principal and agent, and the agent is acting on behalf of the principal. What are the advantages of having an agent? The agent may have special knowledge of the business and expertise to carry out the particular job when the principal lacks necessary skills. The parties in agency: principal, agent, and the third party. Third party is the person with whom they are dealing with in a particular transaction. The contract of sale that arises is enforceable between the principal and the third party. Agent has no liability to either of the parties. It's just an intermediary that has an authority to act on behalf of the principal. The principal can be any of the following: the seller of the goods, the owner of the goods, the buyer of the goods who instructs the agent to buy the goods on his or her behalf. The agent. Problem is that it is not always clear as to whom the agent works for. An agent may work for a principal, who is the seller or buyer of the goods. The nemo dat rules deals with who is the rightful owner of the goods. No one gives what they don't have. So this means that according to the rule of nemo dat, if the principal doesn't have enough rights to transfer to the third party, then they cannot transfer the rights they don't have. A third party may not even be aware that the person that they are dealing with is an agent, not the principal, and not the owner of the goods, but is only representing the owner of the goods. Accordingly, the third party needs some protection by the law. My advice would be to, in an exam on this topic, is that in a problem question on agency, you should usually expect you to discuss if the agent has an authority to act and if the authority was exceeded. So you need to make sure that you understand the structure of agency relationship, and especially on what basis agents have an authority to act. What are the ways of an agent to acquire such an authority? There are actual authority, ostensible authority, all this. There are various cases that are involved that you would need to discuss in order to establish whether or not an agent in the problem question scenario did have an authority to act. So make sure that you focus your revision in that area of law. You would most likely need to discuss how agency can be created as well. So make sure that you understand various ways of creation of the agency. You would need to discuss if the agent, given the circumstances, had the authority to act, most probably in common problem questions on agency. The creation of agency, it is important to note that the distinction between the creation of the agency and the authority, there is a distinction, it's not the same thing. The creation of the agency is how the agency can be created. It can be created by an agreement, it can be created orally, and you need to show in the facts of the case, where do you think, where does it show that the agency was created? And the other issue is if the agent, if such an agency was created so that the agent had the authority to do the act that he or she did. So those are the two distinct legal issues that you will most likely need to discuss in a common problem question on agency. An agency may be created by an express or implied agreement between the principal and the agent, where there is a representation by the principal to the third party that the agent has authority, or the principal ratifies an act by someone who, without authorization, purported to undertake that act as an agent of the principal or by necessity. So in a problem question, you would need to discuss which one of these ways applies on the facts that has been given to you and why. There are no formalities required for creating an agency normally. There could be a contract, which is a usual way to create an agency. So if you see on the facts of the case that the agent has a contract with the principal for the agency relationship, you can state that the contract shows the creation of the agency. Commercial agents. Where a commercial agent, this is Commercial Agents Council Directive Regulation 1993, where a commercial agent has been appointed, the agent is entitled to a signed statement of the terms, but there is no requirement that the contract of appointment is written. So if in a problem question given, the agent is a commercial agent, you would need to also improve, you would need to mention this directive and regulation 1993. Commercial agent is defined as a self-employed intermediary who has continuing authority to negotiate the sale or purchase of goods on behalf of another person, or to negotiate and conclude the sale or purchase of goods on behalf of and in the name of that person. Now let's discuss an example essay. What kind of problem question can you get on this topic? This is an example. The decision of House of Lords made in Magus versus Monjogus has not affected the law on agents' ostensible authority. Critically analyze. Normally you get something like this. You get critical analysis of a controversial statement, and you would need to make arguments on both sides. This case, Magus versus Monjogus is an important case, and if there all the other important cases could also come up on an exam as an essay question. So make sure that you understand the important case law and the principles that came with them. And it would be very good practice if you have a look at past exam papers, if you have them, to make sure that you have better information as to what kind of essays they could put in your exam. But if you don't have those, I would like to remind you that we have a lot of essays you can have a look on commercial and agency law on our website. In the introduction, I suggest that you start with definitions. This applies to all the essays. In an essay, you usually start with definitions of what is the legal principle that is mentioned, that is being mentioned. And if the question also includes a case, which is the case for this one, you should also explain that case and explain what is the main principle from that case and the main issue of the essay question. I mean, the main body of the arguments, you need arguments both sides, and you need to critically analyze how the case of Magus versus Monjogus affected the law on agents' ostensible authority, and make sure that you back up all the arguments for the legal authorities. You cannot just say what you think. You have to always base what you say on valid legal principles, or at least journal articles or some resources, rather than just say just purely your opinion. It is important for you to understand that the agency essay we have here on this website is not a coursework level answer. It is an answer that is expected on an exam, a timed exam, of about when you have only like 45 minutes to write or 60 minutes, and different level is expected on courseworks. But if you have a timed exam, or even if you have a coursework, it is a very good example for you to have a look, just to learn more about what kind of analysis you are expected to have on an essay question like this. But you cannot copy any parts of the essay. You can only use our essays for educational purposes. This is an extract of the essay that I'm going to show to you here. In the case of Amargas, the vice president of a company said that he had power to agree the deal for the sale of a ship. The third party was aware that it was not true, as it was not usual in the company's business that vice president agrees to the deal like this. Despite this, the third party still wanted to enforce the agreement against the principal on the grounds that the vice president had the apparent authority to enter into the contract. Lord Keith of Kinghall provided the significant judgment in the House of Lords in this case. As you can see, the language doesn't have to be perfect if it's an exam where you have very limited time. There is also some flexibility about grammar issues, but obviously if you can minimize that, that would be good. But you should worry more about getting everything on there in the time limit given to you, rather than worry about your English or grammar. Lord Keith provided the law on ostensible authority and contended that the ostensible authority comes where the principal, by words or conduct, has presented that the agent has the requisite actual authority and the party dealing with the agent has entered into a contract with him in reliance of that representation. As you can see, we have explained the case, as well as we have explained what is ostensible authority and how Lord Keith has represented the law on ostensible authority in this case. The principal in these circumstances is stopped from denying the actual authority existed. Nonetheless, Lord Keith's argument was that the present case was outside the scope of this doctrine. So this is the main issue that we have to discuss, because Lord Keith has departed from the usual interpretation of ostensible authority, and he said that in this case, the present case was outside the scope of this doctrine. So this is the main point that we need to discuss in detail and critically analyze if Lord Keith was right in holding that this case was actually outside the scope of the doctrine. Ostensible general authority can certainly not arise where the contractor knows that the agent's authority is limited, so as to exclude entering into transactions of the type in question, and so cannot have relied on any contrary representation by the principal. And the Russo Chinese Bank case applied. As you can see, we are here citing a case, but we're not putting the full name, because when it's a timed exam, you're not expected usually to put the full names of the case. I'm just telling you what are the common rules, but I suggest that you have a look at the rules specifically of your university and make sure that you follow the writing style and the referencing style that they recommend. You can read the full essay on agency here on this link. When you receive the slides, you will have the links that you need to go to. I suggest you revise commercial agency law with the following resources. We have notes, revision notes, example essays, videos like this one, and cases. We also have some animated videos for case law, and you should go to our commercial and agency law resources at this link here provided, so that you can see our resources and revise with them. To sum up, it is very important that you analyze your exam requirements how many questions do you have to answer, and what are possible questions. Get your past exam papers, have a look at them, or if you don't have them, you can have a look at SimpleStudying resources. Do selective studying, choose the topics that are most likely going to come up in the exam and the number of topics that you're required to answer. So if you are required to answer only 2 questions out of 4, you don't need to know all the 4 topics, you need to know 2. And you need to practice answering problem and essay questions and make sure that you follow your professor's guidelines. This is because grading is subjective and your professor may have specific requirements for answering problem and essay questions on specific topics. For example, we've had cases where some professors wanted the essay to be started in a certain way with a certain definition and to mention certain cases rather than others. So it is important that you follow your professor's guidelines. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about us and how we can help you. Our team of content creators are law graduates who have achieved in their respective law degrees high grades, high to 1 first class grades, and we have created simple study resources specifically focusing on getting high grades, which is the unique side of our resources. Unlike the study books that give you a lot of information, we give you very simple and condensed resources that focus specifically to help students understand how to get a first class in the simplest way possible. We have a variety of study resources so that we accommodate all types of learners. We even have animated videos for important cases that you can have a look. Notes, we have revision notes, example essays for you to understand how to answer problem and essay questions. It's equally important as notes. We have quizzes and flashcards to help students practice their knowledge, test their knowledge. We have exam tips all over our resources. On the notes, you will find plenty of exam advice for you to understand how you're supposed to apply your knowledge to the common questions. And we also have study groups where you can interact with our community and get the help on any question you may have. If our study resources are not enough, we have additional tutoring services, and our tutors will be able to assist you one-to-one on a Zoom meeting like this one, or with any matter that you may need in your legal studies, whether it's a coursework, you need guidance on a coursework, or you need help to prepare for your exams, or you have gotten low grades and you do not understand how you're supposed to answer problem and essay questions in your upcoming assessments to get a better grade. Whatever it is you may be struggling with in your legal studies, we will be able to help you, give you personalized one-to-one support and tutoring sessions. We have already helped thousands of law students get high grades, and regular students usually get a first class. Regular students are the ones who regularly study with our study resources and practice, and also get tutoring sessions at least before the exams. If you want to be our next student to get high grades, please join SimpleStudying now. And we also highly encourage you to join our WhatsApp groups so that you get the support of our community. Thank you very much.